And good afternoon, and welcome everybody to Deering Live on this fine Thursday, May 20th. Welcome aboard for the afternoon, and thank you so much for joining us. We've been going for quite a while on Deering Live now. This is awesome. We were just talking backstage about how this is probably going to be something that continues for quite some time, and very excited that everybody could join us. But this week, we are honored and very excited to feature fiddle and banjo legend, Bruce Molsky on Deering Live. Bruce is a true master of the old-time Appalachian music, known for his talents on both the banjo and the fiddle, and has received high praise from a diverse set of fans and collaborators over the years, including Mark Knopfler, jazz guitarist Bill Frisell, and dobro master Jerry Douglas, who we all know and love. Bruce is currently a member of the faculty at the Berklee College of Music for the American Roots Music Program, all the way from Beacon, New York. Please welcome Mr. Bruce Molsky. How are you doing?
I'm doing just great. It's really nice to be here with you. Of course, the definition of with has changed these days. To be joined by you and joining you. This is a wonderful thing you're doing with Deering Online.
Thank you very much. We enjoy having it, and it's really, really great to have such a diverse, eclectic mix of banjo players from all around the world and different styles and different attitudes towards the instrument. And you are definitely no exception. You've got a tremendous background in this, and I'm really looking forward to the conversation. Before we do that, still in Buenos Aires, Dave, how are you?
Doing very well. Good to be here.
Hopefully back in the US in the next few weeks. Couple of weeks. All right, very good. Bruce, top of the show, we're going to invite you if you would be willing to play a little song for us.
I'd be happy. I just happen to have banjos around me. Here's one.
Would you look at that? And hopefully some fiddle a little later too.
I've got that just off camera.
Awesome.
Never get too far away from this stuff.
Change the setting.
I'll just dive into just something here. Let's
go for it.
Come on down, come on boys, you better get around. Swing old Adam, swing old Eve, swing them both before you leave. Oh, babe. Never get me up, never get me down, never getting up, old Miss Brown. Oh, boys, come on down, come on boys, you better get around.
Fantastic.
Thanks.
Really great to have you here.
Oh, great to be here. Great to be here. It's great to be anywhere these days. And always good to play a tune. Yeah.
Well, I'm interested to start out. I know you grew up in New York City. How'd you get so interested in old-time Appalachian music?
It was just a progression of things. I grew up at kind of the tail end of what a lot of people refer to as the folk revival, or some people call it this folk scare of the 60s, right? But folk music from rural areas, and especially from the American South, were starting to appear in the big cities, and thanks to initially by a guy named Harry Smith, who was he was a crazy visual artist who put together a set of recordings in 1952 that came out on Folkways Records called the Anthology of American Folk Music. and most people kind of affectionately refer to it as the Harry Smith Anthology. And it was just a collection of commercial recordings from the 1920s that really encompassed a swath of what American music is, and the breadth and depth of American culture that really contributes to this really unique sound that we have. And it affected a lot of people, jumped on it. And you had groups like the New Lost City Ramblers, you know, and some of the earlier groups that started to kind of mine this music and bring it out in the public. And I used to go downtown and to places like the McBurney YMCA on 14th Street and hear Ralph Stanley and the Clinch Mountain Boys. I heard Bill Monroe one time. Tex Logan, the great fiddler, was a, you know, people like to think of these people as country people, but he was a really high flying electrical engineer who worked for Bell Labs in New Jersey doing project research. And so he lived around New York and he came to town. It was all there. And I guess initially anybody could have become aware of it because of the music that was being played on the radio. That was so kind of so much folk kind of influence on it. And you know, you could listen to the Beatles and Jimi Hendrix, which I did. But you could also hear, you know, the New Seekers, and you could hear Bob Dylan, who was just kind of coming of age at that point. There was, you know, New York's a great place for music, like a lot of the big cities in the North.
Yeah. And that's about the same time as when New York had, you know, people like Tony Trischka and David Grisman and Pete Wernick and all of them, right?
Well, two of the three of those guys, when I went to college the first time, which didn't work out so well, they worked in a shop in Ithaca, New York. I think it was called Guitar Center. Anyway, Tony and Russ Barenberg were running around there, and I had no idea who they were. You know, I was just a kind of a folky guitar player that was just starting to play banjo and didn't know much at all about old time music. And that really became that was really a hub for a lot of bluegrass. There's a great violin maker named Eric Aceto up there that I'm sure some of the listeners this afternoon are aware of. I really didn't know what I was getting into. But of course, Tony, I know Tony has a close association with you all at Deering, but he's also a close friend of mine, and we play a lot of music together. And you know, he's been with it all the way through, you know, incredibly inspiring.
And did you ever get to know closely Pete Seeger? Because he's in the area, he lived in Beacon where you're living now, right?
Well, of course, he was a hero when I was a little boy, long before I ever met him. But we knew each other as neighbors and played together a little bit. And in fact, Tony and I and Pete recorded a tune together one time for a CD of his. But we knew him as just this incredible, positive member of the community here. I mean, he's been gone a while, but he left a very, very strong imprint around here, and deservedly so. I mean, he did some. I'll tell you just a real brief example of that. I mean, I was in the post office one day, and my cell phone rang, and he said, "Hey, Bruce, it's Pete," and it was like October. He says, "I want to have a gathering for some of the parents that have really young children right around Christmas time. And I've talked to the chief of police, and he's given us a parking spot at the end of Main Street. And would you come on such and such a date at such and such a time at 6:00, where it's not going to be more than an hour because that's the attention span the kids will have, and will you play a couple of tunes?" And well, of course, sure, Pete. And then I heard nothing for 2 months, and I thought, well, okay. Phone rings in December. "Are you still coming?" And well, of course. And I got there at 5:45 or whatever, and there was a big crowd of people around. I don't know how he got them there, but they were there. And they were hooking up a portable sound system to the battery of an old pickup truck. And Pete gathered everybody together. He sang a couple of songs, and then he turned it over to me and some other local musicians to play. But the thing that was amazing about it, and the thing that made me realize why I love what he was about so much, was that when the thing really got rolling and all the energy was there, he literally was dancing around the circle of people such joy. I thought, man, if you could feel like that 10% of the time, you'd have a life. And his was a life well spent. He was he was a good neighbor.
Yeah. He truly walked the walk in everything he did.
Absolutely.
Nothing was just for show.
Yeah. Yeah.
Getting into the music a little bit, but staying on the New York theme, you mentioned Ithaca earlier, and this is kind of, I've heard about the Ithaca sound and like in old time music. And can you kind of talk about what that is a little bit?
Yeah. I mean, I was in Ithaca in the 1970s. And if there was an Ithaca sound at that time, it wouldn't be exactly what you might think of it now. But the scene was, the old time scene was really strong, thanks mostly to the Highwood String Band, who were incredible band that was on the circuit playing all the festivals at that time. And their banjo player, Mac Benford, was really an institution and a wonderful guy. We just lost him not that long ago. But they had a really strong, really well-educated, brilliant, diverse band sound. And you can find them all over. If anybody's listening tonight and wants to find them, you can find them all over YouTube. So I used to hang with them. They had big parties in the summertime, and they were very much out there. There was another band from Rochester called the Swamp Root String Band, and they would come down and play in the area. Their fiddler, Sandy Stark, who now lives in Boston, she's a visual artist. She was a great fiddler. I haven't heard her in years. I'm sure she still is. And it was, in Trumansburg, New York, there was a place called the Rongovian Embassy. And there was a lot of music that would happen there. It kind of shortened its name to the Rongo. And there was so it was easy to be drawn into that. But if you talk about the Ithaca sound, I would attribute a lot of the kind of distinctive rhythm that you hear people play that claim to have that sound. A lot of that comes from the fiddler Judy Hyman and her husband Jeff Klaus. They've been on this. They've lived there for many, many years. And they're amazing musicians and have had a lot of influence on people there. And it's just a really interesting, very compelling, sort of unique personal rhythm that they have in their music. And and there's kind of a common repertoire to the area, and once again a really strong scene of people that love to play together and love to get together when you can get together.
And then one more question on staying on the New York frame is you just mentioned Rochester, and there's kind of a famous old time tune, Rochester Schottish.
Yeah.
But what is a Schottish? What is that exactly? Because
Schottish is a repurposing of the word Scottish, and it's a dance.
Okay.
A true, Rochester Schottish is actually a reel. A Schottish is much slower dance and has a whole different rhythmic kind of component. A traditional Schottish, sounds nothing like Rochester Schottish. Yeah.
You're a fantastic fiddle player, and I'm interested how you approach playing a fiddle tune on the banjo, especially, you can't do everything you can do on a fiddle on the banjo. It's just, so how do you work with when you're playing a fiddle melody, just solo on a banjo, how do you work in some of those things what are the things that you change that that you would do on the fiddle melodically, I guess?
How much time you got? Because I have 10 answers to that question. I think if you take a classic fiddle recording, and then you take somebody who's a great banjo player interpreting that onto the banjo, one of the first things that pops up is, how do you make those two things jibe with each other, a fiddle and a banjo version? And I've come to the conclusion that it's about phrasing and it's about rhythmic pulse. the fiddle can do certain things, and solo fiddling, and I'd love to play you something a little later if you want. You can have a certain amount of chord movement, and you can have a certain kind of percussive element, but mostly the fiddle is about melody. One of the things about old time banjo, anyway, which is the thing I know about, is that if you start to think about what comprises a complete piece of music, then all these elements kind of present themselves, and clawhammer banjo lends itself to that. You can express the most important essential parts of a melody. Maybe you can't grab all the notes, but you can get enough of it to define it and to give it phrasing, and you can underpin that with chords, and of course it's a drum. So the rhythmic element is it's automatically there, So if I'm a guitar player before any of this other stuff, and so I'm always thinking of what chord progression I'm in. If you can identify the chord movement and grab enough of the melody notes and leave enough space and comp on the rhythm, then you can make a fiddle melody work on very banjoistically, if you will. And so, certain fiddle tunes lend themselves to a banjo really well. Certain ones don't. Just the way the way the rhythm is, if sometimes the important notes in the melody aren't where you can get them. I mean, we have a basic strum on the banjo when it's in tune, and then we have little figures that we do to add other things, and different ways of comping rhythm and grabbing melody notes, but you can't get everything. So that there's certain limitations with that, but it's doable.
And do there's different, like the Ken Perlman style playing clawhammer banjo, playing very melodically,
right?
Versus another style we might throw in more chords, more strumming. Do you prefer one style, or do you lean on the way you approach it?
I don't really think about it that way. I think more. I think of the players who really inspired me to want to play. I think an important part of this whole thing is, if you're going to play traditional music, is knowing enough about how it was played in the old-fashioned way, and having that in a thoughtful way in your own playing. Not to say you should slavishly imitate anything. I don't think that's the way to go. But to know what these old people did, they melodic banjo playing is a fairly new thing. When you hear people like Ken, and it's been taken even steps further by people like Adam Hurt, who I'm sure you're familiar with.
Yeah.
And doing really beautiful melodic kind of things, but he's got a lot of chord movement in his playing. So there's a lot of ways to do this, Yeah,
definitely. What about when you're playing behind a fiddle? When you're not behind or with a fiddle, either way. How do you approach playing the melody? Do you just kind of try to match what the fiddle is playing, or do you try to play something that like a counterpoint sort of melody?
It depends. Sometimes you want to kind of parallel what the fiddler's doing and parallel their phrasing, and sometimes it's call and response. If it's a melody that has a lot of space between the melodic phrases, that's an opportunity for the banjo to keep the momentum going and play, either comp something or answer. And I think, the best kind of fiddle banjo duets you hear do a lot of both. Tommy Jarrell and Fred Cochran were heroes of mine. I got to meet Tom quite a few times, and his duets with Fred were incomparable because they would play off of each other. You could hear the familiarity. Their rhythmic pulse was like one thing most of the time, and hearing that kind of tightness. When I try to back somebody up on a banjo, I try to leave room for the fiddle to do what they need to do, and I try to just get the accents. It's not just a matter of capturing the melody, but getting the accents in the right place and the breath in the right place and the dynamic, there's really no substitute for having played with another person for a long time. And some of you folks out there who play in jam sessions or are going to be returning to jam sessions, that you can sit down and just instant comfort level with somebody you've played with before. And it's a lot of it is that speaking the same language.
Well, do you want to, while we're still on the kind of fiddle topic, do you want to pick up your fiddle and play a tune on it for you?
Yeah. I always, from the minute I picked up a fiddle, I always wanted to sing with it. And I think the fiddle, mimics the human voice so well. And maybe I'll sing something for you. I'll see what comes out here. I'll play a little bit of Pretty Sarah.
Oh, I left my pretty Sarah and I quit my mother too. I started out to ramble this country all through, and when I get tired, I'll sit down and weep and think of my little darling wherever I sleep. It's not this long journey I'm a-dreading to go, or the country I come from, or the debts that I owe. There's just one thing that leaves me and troubles my mind. It's leaving my little darling way back here behind. If I were a merchant and I could write a fine hand, I would write my love a letter that she'd understand. I would write by the river where the waters overflow, and I dream of my little Sarah wherever I go. Oh, Sarah, pretty Sarah, please tell me you're mine. Do you think me unworthy? Do you think me unkind? When our life here is over, you surely will see I have treated you as kindly as you've treated me. Hey, why not? I couldn't help myself.
Nice. What was that second tune?
That was called the Rebels Raid. That's actually a Civil War era tune.
Very good. I love it. Just why not?
Stuff gets in your head, you know.
Yeah, definitely. And listening to your singing there, I mean, I love how, especially, you know, with the fiddle there, when you're singing and you're just locking right in on that melodic note, and they just resonate together when it really locks in. It has this sound. It's fantastic.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. It's just I've always, as I say, I always wanted to play and sing at the same time, and I have two good violins, and part of my reason for choosing them is because they resonate with my voice, and I wish you could stick your ear right in here, because you can hear when it's working, you hear all the overtones, and that's really kind of rewarding. It all kind of vibrates right there.
Yeah, it's like when you pick up any really good instrument and just feel those overtones. Other people may not feel it when you feel it in your chest. You know.
Yeah, definitely.
It's just. Do you think being a fiddle player, because you sing while playing banjo quite a bit too? Do you think being a fiddle player and knowing melodies so strongly has helped your singing that way, even as a banjo player?
I think instrumental fiddle melodies are kind of. I feel like the fiddle taught me to sing in a way, because I'm always trying to get the timbre of the fiddle, and the thing that's really interesting to do on a banjo is to try and swing your vocalizations while keeping that real strong metronomic kind of beat on the banjo, because it's not just in folk music, but in any style of music, hearing the tension between the different instruments adds so much energy and makes the music so much more compelling. And you can do that as a solo performer if you're really solid when you're accompanying yourself, solid enough and well grounded enough and in your muscle memory enough to where you can think about how to swing the melody when you sing. And so I think that's what you were talking about, opportunities of things to do on the banjo. That's one thing that I like to kind of mess around with when I play.
That's cool. Yeah, it's like being in a band with a really good drummer, and it gives you the freedom to really play with the rhythm, because you know that the foundation is going to be right there no matter what
you can do call and response with yourself. I mean, it's like talking to yourself. But a great example on the Harry Smith anthology that I mentioned earlier is a really classic recording by Clarence Ashley. He also went by Tom Ashley, who played with Doc Watson before Doc Watson was Doc Watson. But he played the cuckoo.
Yep.
And the way he accompanies himself in call and response, and the way his banjo locks in with his voice is, it's a reference standard for me anyway.
And when you're singing, are you mostly playing more harmonic ideas, more chordal ideas, rather than single lines or melodic ideas?
Do you mean
banjo?
On the banjo?
Yeah.
I tend to harmonize things, and I like to express chords. I don't like to, there are banjo players that strum the chords so strongly. I don't like to do that. I just like to me, if you want to change chords, all you got to do is hit that next chord once, and that sets the listener's ear. That sets my ear.
Right.
I think too much of a good thing can be a little too strong sometimes, but just the right amount is enough to support the melody, which is the thing that's that's the boss. And so it's all that, making a piece of complete music is a balancing act between all those different things, making it work.
Okay. And then I remember when I was learning clawhammer banjo from books, there was always talk about, it was harder thanks I didn't have as much access to recorded licks as you do today.
Yeah.
But I remember always coming across the Galax lick, and at the time not understanding really what they're talking about, because it was tabbed out and differently each time too in books, so it never really made sense. Can you talk a little bit about what the Galax lick exactly is?
I actually can't. I'm really not sure what that is.
Okay.
I mean, there's a distinctive rhythm from that part of the country. You know, Gaelics, the music of Grayson and Carroll counties has a really strong thing. And my first banjo hero was from Grayson County. He was Wade Ward. And maybe I can play you a Wade Ward tune, and you can tell me if I did the Gaelic lick.
That'd be thattastic. Yeah.
That's be another way to go about it, because I've heard it referred to and heard people do different things. But one of the things that's characteristic of music from around there is pickups and how you pick up into the downbeat on something. And of course, Wade Ward used a lot of rolls. Sorry, I'm having a little tuning trouble here. We'll try that. Try a little Polly Put the Kettle On, see how it goes. Did I do it?
From what I might be wrong, but what I always, when you do the bring ding, that thing, that's what the way I've always thought of it as. I might be wrong. Somebody can definitely chime in the chat.
I just call that a roll.
Yeah.
And that's all over music. All the one of the things about music from that region is that a lot of the melodies start on the beat before the downbeat.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we play into the downbeat. It makes for really strong. It's great for playing dances because it kicks the dancers in the butt and pushes them across the room. Tunes like Fortune, and the way you get that slide, unless you've got a fretless banjo, is to play a roll. So that would be a really kind of a regional thing. Yeah.
Cripple Creek would probably be the most famous song that does that sort of, playing before the beat sort of thing.
Yeah, I teach a series of workshops for Peghead Nation, and also for Cafe Lena, which is a really great outfit in Saratoga Springs, New York. And Cripple Creek is I covered that on the banjo just recently because Tommy Jarrell had a really great version of it with a lot of cool stuff. And that roll, that Gaelic lick that you're talking about, is right there, right at the top of the beginning of the tune. That rhythm is a really important part of those tunes.
Yeah. And I think it's hard to people learning from tab. It's hard for it to be tabbed out right, and a lot of people learn playing it very, very squared up versus having that
I,
Full accent.
you know, I know I'll get my hand slapped for saying this, but I don't teach with tab because I think for me, part of becoming a good musician in the folk tradition is your ear skills and your ability to hear phrasing. And I prefer to teach more in nuts and bolts fashion. And I would teach you a roll or a Gaelic lick and make you and I'd be more interested in you feeling that than if you just play individual notes off a piece of paper. It's a roadmap. I mean, it'll keep you from running off the road. But is it language? Is it speaking? How do you get from reading something to really expressing something? And I really think it's more important to take these little licks and hammer them to death until they're really in your hands. And that's when once you get them there, then you can start to speak. And not to denigrate written music at all, but it's just not how I learn to play, and it's not how I think about it.
I 100% agree with you personally. When I'm teaching, I like to try to teach people by ear more. I've seen the tab crutch be a big problem. It was a problem for me. I play others. I went to music school and everything, but still, it was still hard on banjo to get off of playing in the tab sort of mentality. It was hard to use the other things that I knew.
Yeah. Well, it's an exercise that I give my students, my fiddle students mostly a lot, is to take a melody that they've learned off of sheet music or that they can just kind of play the rudiments of and just sing it. Just sing it and listen to how your voice and the construction of your body and your language, I have a Bronx accent. I'll never sound like a Southerner, but how that immediately tells you where the accent goes, where the breath goes. Sing that melody and then try to play it with the same accent and breath as you sang it. And that gets you off the kind of metric nature of reading things off a page, and really gets you to feel it. And it's kind of a hard exercise if you do it right. But how do we learn by ear? How do you learn a melody? How do you learn a tune? If you're like most people, you listen to the recording and you sing along. So when you go to finally pick up that instrument, try to play it like you sang it, and it'll make more sense, I think.
Tony Trischka talks a little bit about this. Something he learned from John Hartford about playing the syllables, and it's just because you're playing more of the way you'd actually express it vocally naturally than just what fits under your fingers.
Yeah, the great Scottish fiddler Alistair Fraser talks about vocables, and that's the relationship that he makes between the sound that he gets on the fiddle and spoken language. Because there's maybe more so on a fiddle than a banjo, but to some extent on a banjo you have it's not just the notes and the timing of the notes, it's the timbre, and the same way that as you change the shape of your mouth, the timbre of the words that come out change. And if you can work with that a little bit, that adds more of a kind of a human element to playing things instrumentally. I don't know. I feel like I'm kind of running off the road with some of this stuff, but after you played music a long, long time, you really, really you start to look for what gives it the drive and makes it make sense. And it always, for me, it always comes down to language.
And it goes into you play traditional music, but you've been praised for being able to not be chained to the tradition and have part of yourself put into it. And I think that's extremely important in any kind of music, but especially when we're playing traditional music, because a lot of the time we need to keep it alive. Is that one way you kind of keep it alive and getting yourself into it without while still staying on the tradition, still not just
Well, I think any good musician listens to other people play as much as they play themselves. And to play, I strongly believe that you shouldn't be a slave to tradition, but to be to play it right, and if you want to be a link in that folk music chain, you really got to understand and respect the important elements of the music that came before you, And so I'm always listening to old recordings of people, but at the end of the day, you play with your own voice, and you should,
Mhm.
and there's nothing wrong with that. If you're well grounded enough in the music that came before you and the music that's interesting and that has integrity, then your music will have integrity. I think that's we all want to be creative with this, and
Yeah.
I'm never going to sound like anybody else, and I don't seek to.
How would you define what old time music is? Doesn't
Well,
have to be a definition, but what would you explain old time music?
old time music is God. First of all, the term old time music is a commercial invention from the 1920s. But
Yeah.
that aside, the thing that I think about old time music is music that people play. It's community music. It's social music. It's music that brings people together. I went to my first fiddlers convention in 1974, and I drove down to Galax, Virginia, in my 1967 Plymouth Barracuda with the black, with the glass pack mufflers, and arrived and found this scene of people sitting around in big, huge circles jamming. And I hadn't been played that long, and immediately the music had a social component for me. Immediately, I knew it was going to be something that drew me to people for a particular reason, something that we all loved, and so old time music for me is that. And I imagine I didn't grow up there, but talked to a lot of old folks, and you didn't have a whole lot of opportunities for entertainment 100 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
People had to entertain themselves, and this is one of the ways that they did it. So, in addition to so much of the music being beautiful and artful, it was a way to communicate with each other and a way to have community. And it's always been like that for me. I have friends in this music that I've had since the very beginning, and we're still all interested in a lot of the same things, and we've kind of grown up with each other. So old time music is that for me. It's I hesitate to say it's a lifestyle, but it kind of is. Any kind of obsession is.
You retuned your banjo when you played that last tune. What tuning are you using on there?
Right now, this is just straight G tuning.
Oh, that's G tuning. What tuning were you in then?
What I was in earlier was double C.
Okay.
Which
and do you often use other tunings other than G and double C?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love tunings.
Do you do that F tuning? I've heard about Chris. We did one of these with Chris Cool, and he was talking about a tuning. You're in G, but you really just tune the G string down to F almost. I think he learned it from Adam Hurd or something.
Okay, let's try this. I'm not sure, but
yeah.
Here's your double C.
Yeah.
If you tune your third string from G to F and tune your thumb string from G to F, then you end up with something that a lot of people call last chance tuning.
Okay.
And it's a really great tuning for melodies that reach up high. Like if I was playing with a fiddler who would reach up to that high B, which is the highest note in first position on the fiddle, I would want to use this tuning because I can get to that note easily. Of course, now I'm a whole tone down, so it's not B, it's A, but it's the third degree of the scale. So I put a tune on the banjo if you want to hear it, that I adapted from a fiddle tune, and it's called the Flying Indian, and it works really, really well in this tuning.
Yeah.
you have phrases that go up high like that, this tuning is really convenient. I don't know if this is the tuning you were talking about.
No, but it's great. It's great. I love the resonance of it. And so what key was that tuned in? Without
It comes out in F.
Okay.
So if you started in double C tuning and you took your third string and fifth string down a whole tone to F, then you would get this chord shape, and it's really, it's nice, and especially in F, it's nice, and when you tune an instrument down, it's really throaty sounding, and you get that you can really ring those nice open chords on the bottom.
Cool. I gotta try it out. Definitely.
Do, yeah.
One thing that I find myself when I'm playing, I'll make up, little tunes all the time in, playing clawhammer, but it's hard to kind of wrap it together to make it. Is this in my mind? I'm like, is this a tune or is this just me noodling around on the banjo? Do you ever find yourself there? And how do you kind of
you talking about writing things?
Yeah, as writing something when you're just.
Oh, boy. I've been struggling with writing for years, and I haven't written that many tunes. It's really hard to know when you're done. And if you think about, if you're me and you think about it too much, you end up with something somebody else wrote already.
Exactly.
We all have that problem, but I had never written any tunes at all. And about 10 years ago, Tony Trischka and I and a wonderful guitar banjo player, Paula Bradley, we had a little group called Jawbone. And we got together and at the first rehearsal, Tony said, we were just throwing ideas out, at each other. And he said, Bruce, let's play something you wrote. And I said, well, I haven't written anything. And he looked me in the eye and he said, you have 1 week to write a tune. I'm calling you every day. And he did. And I wrote a tune. And it felt really good, But I've written a few tunes since then. But I think modern technology, iPhones, smartphones are really great. If you get an idea, sing it into the phone. If you're on the bus or walking along the street, and come back to it later, and just hammer it away. That's kind of how I do.
I did that today. I was listening to your music, getting ready for the interview, and I was like, I just picked up my banjo and started playing, and it's probably pretty much to one of the tunes you were playing, but not correctly. It's just the wrong way of playing one of your tunes. But it was. Right now, it's my tune.
Oh, cool, great. I wrote a tune last week that my wife said a certain part of it sounded a lot like Shady Grove. The rest of it doesn't, but I decided that just so that nobody accuses me of anything, I named it Shoddy Grave. It's going to happen. There's no such thing as a new idea. All we do is take what we know and just move it forward,
There's only 12 notes. You can only move them around so many ways.
Kind of, yeah.
You've got this other banjo there. Do you want to kind of talk about? Well, let's first talk about what banjo you have with you, and then maybe talk about this other banjo that's next to you.
You know much more about this banjo than I do, other than that I like it. It's an open back banjo. It's a Deering, and it has a couple of little pieces of foam rubber because I've been messing with the setup today. But this is what I'd call a straight, solid, old time banjo. It's got a pretty deep tone. It sings. It has a voice of its own, and as you were describing to me earlier, it's got a Dobson style tone ring, which is a unique kind of thing. If anybody's familiar with John Herman, great old time banjo player who lives in Asheville, North Carolina. He plays a Dobson style banjo, and he plays an old one, and this sound is in that family to me. Yeah, I've been enjoying it. Thanks for letting me use it.
And what's the banjo that's next to you there?
The other one is a little older. It was made in the 1870s.
Wow.
And it's a fretless banjo, and it's all hand hammered brass. and it has that big, kind of post minstrel era kind of heel
Heel, right?
and a very wide neck.
And it's a shorter scale, it looks like.
It is a shorter scale, and this is a great banjo. This belonged to a dear friend of mine named Ray Alden, who I'm sure some of our listeners would be familiar with. Ray was one of the people that helped bring a lot of the Southern Mountain music to us through some visits he made down south and other places. But he was an avid banjo player, an avid banjo designer. He took this old instrument and salvaged it, and he did what the banjo maker Kyle Creed did with his, which was he had a Formica fingerboard put on it, and for fretless where you want to slide, there's like nothing better. So this you can imitate the sound of a sliding note on a fretted banjo with a very light left hand, but there's nothing like that. And
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you want to hear something on this?
I'd love to hear a tune on it, yeah.
Sure.
Oh, roustabout, where have you been so long? Been on the hill with a $40 man, and honey, I'm going back again. Hop on, hop on. Hop on, my Lulu girl. And where'd you get those brand new shoes? That dress that you wear so fine. Got my shoes from a railroad man, my dress from a driver in the mines. Hop on, hop on. Hop on, my Lulu girl. Oh, baby, oh, hop on, my Lulu girl. Oh, I never loved but one little girl. I'm sorry I ever loved her. She caused me to weep, caused me to moan, caused me to leave my good old home. Hop on, hop on. Hop on to my Lulu girl. Oh, baby, oh, hop on to my Lulu girl.
Was that a mashup of Lulu Girl and other things, or was that?
No, it's a traditional tune called Roustabout,
Okay.
and Fred Cockram of Low Gap in North Carolina played it, and it really comes from African American tradition. There was a bunch of recordings made of a banjo player from Hollins, Virginia, in 1959, and his name was Josh Thomas, and he recorded a really polyrhythmic, amazing version of it that I don't know how it got into the hands of people like Fred, but Mike Seeger, of course, he could master that kind of syncopated style of playing, and he did a beautiful job of that, and a lot of the other music that came from that tradition. But that's but we have so many of these floating lyrics in tunes that occur from one tune to the next.
Mm-hmm.
Who's going to shoe your pretty little feet must be in 100 different songs. It's the folk process, right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, for people that are trying to learn and check out some old time music, what sources would you recommend them listening to?
Ooh.
It's a long list and it can go all around, but if you're just you've named a couple, Tommy Jarrell and Fred Cochran.
Well, there are people who have gotten a lot of they're kind of the go-to names in old time banjo, if you will. And I could list off a bunch of them, but I wouldn't want to list off a bunch of them without listing off people who are equally as great but haven't gotten the accolades.
Yeah.
But my own heroes: Wade Ward, Fred Cochran, Tommy Jarrell, of course, Pete Steele, Roscoe Holcomb, Hobart Smith. But see, I've just named you 6 or 8 or 10 white men, and they don't get credit for all this music.
Yeah.
Listen to Murphy Gribble, who was recorded for the Library of Congress twice in the 1940s with his trio. Amazing banjo playing. Fraser and Patterson. Many years ago, Rounder put out a CD called Altamont Black String Band Music, and it's a compilation of a lot of the great African American players, and it's a go-to for this kind of music. And likewise, a lot of women. Samantha Bumgartner, who recorded in the 1920s some solo things, got that old worried blues, There's Nothing Like It. And she did a couple of duets with a fiddle player named Eva Davis. And that's seminal stuff. There's a banjo player that Allison DeGroot is the banjo player in my trio of Molsky's Mountain Drifters, and she became friends with a Virginia banjo player named Rhoda Kemp, who's still on the scene. She's in her 90s, and played with a group called the Original Orchard Grass in the 1970s, and she's a powerhouse. You have Matoki Slaughter, and you can see some great footage of her on YouTube, on the internets, with Alice Gerard, who was a close friend of hers. You have, so there's so much music out there to find right now, and it's so much more available. You have sites like Larry Warren's slipperyhill.com, slippery-hill.com. Just go on there and start searching for a tune title, and you'll find all these old recordings of great people playing stuff. The Library of Congress has been digitizing over a long period of time their collections, and of course then there's the state collections. UNC Chapel Hill has an amazing folk library, and there's some great collections going into that library that are becoming available. I could go on and on and on.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like in the same way that the analog way of learning music before the internet made everything so available, the way that I learned a lot of what I know is I'd get an LP of somebody I really liked, and I'd read the liner notes and see, well, this person learned from that person. Who's that person? And I'd seek out their music, and I'd read the back of their LP and say, well, that person learned from that person. And it just became a progression,
Yeah.
But there's just so much to know. It's the same way you'll never get to the end of the internet. You'll never get to the end of folk music.
That's great information. That's great. Some great places for people to check out and keep searching and keep digging. Not just going through the hits of old time music.
yeah. I mean, the hits are great to know because they're the tunes they're the ones you pull out in a jam session. They're the ones that everybody knows.
Right.
But there's other ones out there too, that are really great. Another banjo player who was beautiful singer was Maggie Hammonds Parker from West Virginia, who had a really great, strong banjo style. Yeah, there's always something to listen to.
Well, Bruce, this has been a lot of fun. I mean, I've always been a big fan. When I've been trying to learn fiddle tunes through the years, so many times I find myself going back to your recordings, and I think it's, it's great playing. Also, the clarity of the recording versus some very older recordings where it's scratchy and hard to hear the notes.
Mm-hmm.
But it's always authentic. It's been fun having you on here.
I
want to
very much.
Check with Jamie, see if we have anything in the chat that I'm missing.
Yeah, we haven't really done a question and answer thing.
No, it's been a lot of enthusiasm, and on the whole, fairly quiet. I think you answered most of the questions that kind of came up, which was awesome. A lot of people they were listing off names of banjo players to research. I think before you'd even call them out, like they just, there's a group of these guys, they just went into all the different, slipperyhill.com and all these different areas.
Nice.
And now they're just kind of talking to each other and sharing ideas and other names to check out. So thank you for starting that conversation.
I wish I could talk to all these people that are making the comments, but we will. We will.
I definitely think there's room for another one. At some point, we'll do another episode with you, because I feel like we kind of skimmed the surface on this, and probably there's like a whole rabbit hole we could go down, or several rabbit holes on different topics. And
I've been down a lot of them. Yeah.
that's why. Be our guide. I certainly haven't. So guide us through it for sure. So
Cool.
Very, very good. Yeah, I think that was really, really fun. Really enjoyed that, and really informative. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thanks once again for having me. This is great. And
absolutely. And for everybody watching, we've been doing Deering Live now for a long over a year, and I think most of the episodes are about an hour long. We have just started a little sub-series called Deering Live Shorts. So each episode hopefully will now be broken down into anywhere between 3 and 5 different highlight topics, about 2 minutes long, 3 minutes long each, so you guys can kind of get involved in that as well. And they'll be released about a week after the initial thing. But the episode itself will be live and available to watch right after we finish. So, Bruce, thank you. Any final thoughts? Any final words of wisdom that you want to share with the world before we?
Music is a reflection of what goes on around us, and let's use it for the positive. And not to trivialize anything at all, but love trumps a lot of the ugly stuff we see going on around us, and music is a great expression of that. So please play your banjos and stay healthy, eat well, wear a mask, and hopefully we'll see you sooner than later.
Couldn't agree more. I think that's kind of the thread that's kind of weaved its way through all of our episodes, is the overwhelming agreement that music is the thing to follow. I think we all agree here. So definitely getting a lot of requests now for one last tune. Would you be willing before we head out?
Be happy to. Let's see.
Happy to.
What'll it be?
So much to choose from. By the way, the fretless sounded incredible. Sounded great.
That's great. That's a fun banjo to play.
Yeah.
I think.
David, thank you as always for joining us.
Yeah.
We'll see you next week.
Next week we'll have, for the old time fans, we'll have Nora Brown on, a young, fantastic young old time banjo player.
Old time,
very excited.
Old time music from Brooklyn. She's great. She's a force.
Yeah. And she's what, 17, 16?
Something like, yeah.
Yeah, amazing.
Oh, I know what I'm going to do.
All right. Well, while Bruce is tuning up, deeringbanjos.com/deeringlive for all of the episodes. We'll see you next week. Stay safe. Enjoy yourselves. Enjoy each other. And we're almost at the end. All right.
Almost at the end. Bear with me just a quick second here, because I really, really, really want to play this tune for you.
I'm excited now.
And Dave was asking about alternate tunings, and this is one.
Do you want to share what you're in there?
I will. This is if you started in double D, and you tuned your thumb string down to F sharp, you get this. And I call it How Dry I Am tuning. But maybe I'm too old, I don't know. I'll play a little Wild Bill Jones, and this comes from a great banjo player from Rocky Branch, Kentucky. His name was Clyde Troxel. Daggone it, hang on.
No worries.
I was going to make this seamless.
It's working out perfectly.
That'll work.
I started out for to take a little walk, and I walked upon that Wild Bill Jones. He's a walking, he's a talking by my true lover's side, bidding for to leave her alone. He said his age is 21, too old to be controlled. I drew my pistol from my side, destroyed that poor boy's soul.